Okay, so good evening and welcome to the UTBA's March 2024 monthly meeting. Today we're going to have Marion Whittam hosting the beekeeping calendar, and then Jeff Young, he's going to host the dealing with laying worker colony section. And for now, Jennifer is going to walk us through the markets in the GTA area program.
Thank you again for welcoming me to this meeting at such short order. First in order is I had reached out to Ando on a very serious note. I manage a number of markets across the area, to include the Nathan Phillips Square Farmers Market since 2017, and the North York Farmers Market. I think this is going to be my 4th season there. I became very, very close with one of my vendors, Mark Wilson, Elf Song Apiaries. His family actually was one of the founding families of the Nathan Phillips Square Farmers Market in 1990, and the North York Farmers Market subsequently, I think, 1994. Mark passed tragically and suddenly February 2022, and I contacted Ando to try and discern how I can work with your group to develop a sponsorship or a scholarship, a memorial in Mark's and his family's name. Mark's family, as I said, Nathan Phillips Square, I think the other only oldest markets in the city are the Weston Farmers Market and the St. Lawrence. Mark's family immigrated to Canada from Peru. His parents were apiarists, and he and his brothers inherited skill at that vocation, and I would really love the opportunity to meet and speak with your group in regards to if and how we can develop a scholarship or a memorial, some type of sponsorship in Mark's honor. So that is first and foremost. Secondly, I run a number of markets in the city of Toronto. My impetus is to open markets in underserved areas. So I run markets from deep east, my beloved Scarborough, Malvern. I launched a market there in 2018. It's our flagship, and we're still going quite strong. I met Ando at one of my markets, and subsequently I also ran a market at Fairmont Park for the past 3 years, Gerard and Coxwell, and helped launch a grocery store in the Danforth and Coxwell area over the past year and a bit. And a number of those businesses are, Jen, there's a parquet here, can't you do something here? This is a walking neighborhood. There's nothing in our direct catchment area. So I sent the information to Ando. He followed up with me because he resides in the exact area we aim to open this new market, and he spoke with me in regards to the different fees at different markets, which are I think for many people cost prohibitive, and that is a mission and a mandate for our family of markets. That we open markets in underserved areas. B, that the individuals selling are reflective of the communities in which we serve, behind and in front of the booths. We aim to partner with small family-run farms, urban farms, businesses where a philanthropic aim as part of their business line. We aim to partner with women-led organizations, BIPOC-led organizations, people in career transition, seniors, and also we have this year, we're going to be launching our formal incubator program where we're partnering with we're partnering with 2 grassroots organizations. And there we are going to massage and groom these vendors to at least get them going, give them a taste of what it takes to, you know, get your product in front of your customers, and how to manage your booth and, you know, your product displays, pricing, signage, the whole gamut. And speaking with Ando advised that he was doing some research with your group and found that the costs of many markets are high. Our markets are quite reasonable when you view markets across the city. Nathan Phillips Square would be the one exception because that is a special permit with special events with the city. That permit is usually higher. But in speaking with Ando today, we were just throwing around some ideas. Ando does not feel that the beekeepers within the city may have enough product, even if they wanted to participate in the market, they may not have enough product to commit to a whole season. And we were then thinking of ways perhaps to galvanize and organize different beekeepers from across the city, so we can perhaps be present at the different markets we hold across the area. Incidentally, I work very closely with Honey Guru, Chris Loney. He unfortunately could not be on this call right now. And under our wing with us, Chris has now not only developed an astute line of botanically infused honeys, he's working on mead, and he's also using the honeys and the products that he's making with that honey to create chef-inspired meals. One thing we found at the market, at all of my markets, especially at the junction, honey is, of course, you know, is something that people don't buy every day. And I think given the economic struggles that we are all facing right now, Chris found that having or introducing another product or a series of products related to the honey to help keep driving traffic to the booth was prudent. And he's exhibited that thus far. And for our beloved Mark, he was a pioneer in this. He not only sold the honey, he sold the honeycomb, he sold the bee, the wax, and Mark also sold peonies and sweet peas at the market. So these are just some ideas. It's we're in the infancy of this, and I'm interested to glean your input and what you feel about even if this is a feasibility. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we'll keep in touch for April then. There will be a few discussions with the beekeepers, and we'll let you know what we can do. All right. Marion, do you want to take over?
Yes, Alain, thank you. I'm going to share my screen.
Bye-bye now.
Bye, Jennifer.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ciao. Thank you.
The first thing I'd like to do is the UTBA land acknowledgement. Let us take time to acknowledge the land that we live on and work on and raise our bees and be grateful for it. It has been a site of human activity for thousands of years. Toronto is still the home of many Indigenous people across Turtle Island, the ancestral name of this land. We are grateful to be able to live and work on this land, and I encourage you to learn more about the history of the land and the Indigenous people that were on the land where you now house your bees. This is the City of Toronto land acknowledgement, and I will give you a minute just to read that, and then we'll proceed with the beekeeper's calendar. Sorry. Oopsie, can we something? So. Okay. Can I see it?
We can see the presentation.
Perfect. Wait.
Yeah.
Take it down and just. Okay. Okay, which one is that? That one. Okay. This is the beekeeper's calendar, that one. Okay. And just as a self-introduction, I'm Marion Whittam. I'm the interim vice chair of the UTBA. I've been a beekeeper for 10 years, and I have been a member of this club for the same amount of time. I'm also a member of the Ontario Beekeepers Association, and it gives me great pleasure each month to be able to present the beekeeper's calendar as an education module. Okay. I do believe that when I teach, that it's very important to have references for presentations. And so I have listed all of these references that I have here. And just a reminder that later on, this presentation becomes a YouTube presentation. So you can always go back to it and get the references. But I do teach by the Ontario Beekeepers Association information, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Urban Affairs, and use all of these references. The other thing that's very helpful for new beekeepers or to refresh for experienced beekeepers is the Honeybee Research Center's videos, and there are now over 80 of them, and they're very, very helpful for beekeepers. Hard copy resources are also important. The Dewey Cairns, which is the one on the left, it is a very classic book that has a lot of information. Stories, Guide to Keeping Honeybees, also an excellent resource. And the one on the right is our tech transfer manual, one of them. They have many of them, and they're excellent resources for you. Now, it's spring management, and the focus of the spring management is on preventing starvation of the bees. It has been a very, very unusual winter. Days in February and March, such as today, reached 16 degrees. And in some areas of Ontario, you're getting a lot of trees budding. And there's snow cabbage and willows are starting to bloom. And Jeff was saying today, who's going to be presenting later, that the maples are starting to bud. So my message to you is be very cautious. Our bees are confused by the weather, as we are, because it's March the 5th, and it's a very strange weather fronts we're getting. The average outside temperatures are very variable and unpredictable. One day it's going to feel like spring. A few days later, if you remember about a week and a half ago, we had a snowstorm and lots of ice. That snow and ice melted very quickly, and then there can be a warmer cycle or a colder cycle coming. So the first thing I would suggest is when you do visit your bees that you do a good visual and auditory observations of the external areas of the hive, and don't open the hives if it is less than 10 degrees Celsius. The bees, these days, the bees are probably not in their cluster still, but some may be. They may start be having brood, probably, not sure. It may or may not be too cold to open those hives. So remember, 10 degrees is the magic number. If you do open the hives to take a look in. If we do get a snowstorm and you know, make sure those ventilation, the entrances are free of snow, the ventilation is area is open. It probably is at this point. There's no snow around. On a warm day, you're going to see the bees doing their cleansing flights. Some of them may be looking out for nectar now, but there's not a lot there. But the thing is that with your hives, the thing you have to do now is check the weight of the hives by lifting it. And if it feels light, it's a feeding emergency. So on a warm day, and a calm day, a sunny day, quick open the hive and add fondant. When you're doing supplemental feeding in the spring, once you start it, you really can't stop it until there is a really good nectar source or a nectar source. Dandelion is not the best, but dandelion is the one that's sort of traditionally saying, well, now you can stop feeding. Fondant is, if you're not familiar with it, if you're a new beekeeper, it's kind of a hard keg of sugar that's a condensed form. You place it over the brood box of for emergency feeding. If the temperatures are going to be consistently over 10 degrees, and that means 10 degrees all the time, not just in the daytime, you can start using a baggy method of sugar and water, but that I think is a bit too premature to be doing that at this point. I see on the Facebook page and other beekeeping sites that on Facebook, what about pollen patties? Should I be substituting pollen patties? What do I need to do? Typically, pollen patties are not necessary. Fondant is if the hives are light. The fondant is generally for specific purposes, such as if you're queen rearing, if you're commercial, if you're doing intense splitting, but also any of that uneaten pollen patty substitutes, which sometimes they won't take a lot of it, will be harboring such things as wax moths and small hive beetle if it's left. Dry sugar, you don't, is not recommended to feed it. And the OBA website here is an excellent information section on complete spring feeding. And I encourage you to take a look at that. So the next thing is colony health. Warmer weather in early spring means increased bees, increased brood. And once you have more bees, you also have potential for more Varroa mites. And the spring mite treatments need to be done. But what you need to do is you need to understand when you can open the hives, it's consistently over 10 degrees, and to do some mite counts to see what the state of the mites are. And then there's treating thresholds for the spring and for the fall for mites. And the thing is, the Ontario Beekeepers Association has an excellent PDF on Varroa mites, and I encourage you to take a look at that and read that. And also, don't wait to order any Varroa mite treatments. Contact your bee supplier now. Order the Varroa mite treatments so you have them when you need them. And you're going to see here that it's when you're doing the various methods of monitoring mites that really you do not have the threshold is very, very low for mites, and you have to treat at that point. And this is taken from the OBA journals, and it's valid scientific information. Unwrapping hives, there's no rush to unwrap your hives. Basically, you should leave them tucked in with their wraps as quite a while, and then really you got to make sure that it's consistently warm for a couple of weeks before you do that. And what happens if you do leave the wraps on for a while? It only helps the brood to produce. And other things you should think about now is clean and repair any equipment. You might have done that already. Order equipment if necessary. Renew your OBA membership if you haven't done it. Ensure the OMAFRA beekeeper certificates registration, which I'm going to talk about that in a little while, how important that is. Purchase nukes if you require them. Purchase queens if you require them. And another point is, if you are planning to apply antibiotics for American foul brood, and next month I'm going to speak about diseases of the hive and pests of the hive. So American foul brood is a disease of the hive, and some people choose to use antibiotics preventatively to prevent something called American foul brood. If that's the case, that you're going to do that, I encourage you to speak to a veterinarian, to order it, because you cannot purchase it anymore. In a few years ago, they took it off the market. You used to be able to purchase the antibiotic in a farm feed store, but not anymore. So the OBA has a list of veterinarians and the process of how to order this antibiotic on its website. The other thing that is happening is, as it's getting warmer, there are bears that are roaming around. And if you have a bear fence, which I do, that's what you see over here on the left-hand side. There's a bear fence there. That you make sure that it's working properly and activated. And if you're intending to obtain queens, we're going to talk a little bit more about what you need to know if you're purchasing queens. And there's a good PDF on that, again, from the Ontario Beekeepers Association. So here's what you need to know about something called the Ontario Resistant Honeybee, or the ORHBS Selection Program. Honeybees are constantly battling new threats for their survival, for pests, pesticides, and much more. And the ORHBS program is in collaboration with the Ontario Bee Breeders Association and the Ontario Bee Association Tech Transfer Center. The program is world-renowned and is targeted at breeding bees in Ontario that are hardy and have specific inherent traits to adapt to various threats, including Varroa mites and so on. Targeting specific inherent traits increase the adaptability of these bees. And by buying your ORHBS queens from someone that is a part of the ORHBS program, you're supporting the idea of sustainable industry and investing in your bees' health. And so the Ontario Beekeepers Association has on their website more information about the ORHBS program. And if you're buying bees in the spring, it's very important that you buy bees from a respectable supplier. You should ask them if they're part of this bee breeders program and the source and genetics of their bees. For more information on finding a bee supplier or buying your bee equipment, you can see the Buying Bees, What You Need to Know. Again, the Ontario Beekeepers Association, very valuable resource. And the other thing, that anyone who sells bees or queens cells in Ontario are required to obtain from the OMAFRA, so that's from the Ministry of Agriculture and Urban Affairs, apiary inspector must make sure that they are healthy, and a copy of their queen and nuke permits must accompany any purchase. So please make sure that if you're purchasing that you ask for that particular inspection certificate. For new beekeepers, you might be wondering, I'm saying, what are they? She's talking about a nuke. What is a nuke? A nuke is a nucleus colony of bees, and the most common way to purchase honeybees. And a standard nuke really has 2 frames of brood, 1/2 to 3/4 capped with adhering bees, 1 frame of adhering bees, 1 frame of foundation, empty comb, and extra bees to ensure that the brood is kept warm. When you're buying nukes, what you're going to look for. Are the brood frames capped? 2 frames of mostly capped broods versus a frame of larvae will make a huge difference as how quickly your nuke will grow. How old is that queen? Is the queen an Ontario stock or has it been imported? If it's Ontario stock, it's much more used to the climate here. A nuke usually will have queens from a previous summer, ideally selected for their hygienic behavior and bred locally. And many nuke producers do mark their queens with the color of the year, so you'll know. This year, the queens should be marked with green, and green is the color for 2024. And you'll see that there's a legend there of the various colors that are used when you mark, when they're marked. So, but green is this year, and neon green probably shows up really, really well on the marking of them. And the other question is this a spring nuke? Is it available in May or early June? And it consists of an overwintering queen, which has proven to be a good layer and has survived her first winter. A summer nuke is one that's sold in June or later and generally has newly mated queens. And the nuke may not be strong enough to produce surplus honey, just enough to keep them going. And don't expect any surplus honey until the 2nd year. What's the cost? Cost varies a bit, $200, $250, $275, depending on the breeder. And also determine if the price of the nuke box is included or is it extra. And again, the Ontario Beekeepers Association has a really good PDF on where to buy bees and what you need to know. And that's on their website. Apiary permits for queens, nukes, and used equipment. Under the Bees Act, beekeepers require a valid permit to sell or even give away or transfer ownership of honeybees to somebody else. And these permits help to protect health and safety of honeybees and help prevent the spread of disease. And again, on the Facebook page, some people you see that maybe are going to be giving up their bee equipment. That bee equipment, because they're no longer beekeeping, for example, that beekeeping equipment needs to have an inspection certificate. You just cannot be given away because you do not want to have anything spread, any disease spread to your particular hives or apiaries. So also, we talked about on the AMAFRA inspection criteria for selling permits for queens and nukes. And just to let you know, the structure of that, what's required. The bee yard must not have anything positive for American foul brood for at least 2 years. It must not have any European foul brood. We'll be talking about this more next month. There are no pest or disease orders in effect. The average Varroa mite meets the thresholds that we talked about, spring or fall, and the permit is for selling bees, but not for the equipment. And we spoke about the used equipment. At the time of inspection, there should be no signs of disease present, for example, from American foul brood. And that's when the inspector makes sure that that is so. and equipment does not originate from a bee yard does not originate from a bee yard to be found positive for at least the past 2 years. And again, the Ontario Beekeepers Association is extremely good with its information on its website about this. How do I move hives safely? Hopefully you never have to move hives because you've chosen the site. It's ideal. The sun is good. The foliage is good and everything, but sometimes you do. And here's what we had a question when we had our brainstorming session in January about how do I move hives safely. And so I'm going to give you some tips about what to do. You might need to move your hives because you're moving away. Your changes in your yard or your neighbors require that you relocate your hives because they may not be there or properly placed. You found a better location for your hives, or there's not enough blossoms and your bees are not producing honey. But hopefully none of that. Once you get a site, hopefully your bees stay there. So if you do have to move your hives, make sure the new sites are ready to receive the bees and conform with the OMAFRA regulations. And they are listed on the OMAFRA website. The best time to move hives is mid to late spring, at dusk, or nighttime. Nighttime temperatures are greater than 10°C or above. So you gather the tools to seal and secure the hive beforehand. You make sure that you have at least 2 people to help. Everyone helping should wear protective gear, including bee suit and gloves. Have your smoker and hive tool there. 2 sets of ratchet straps per hive. Metal screen and staple gun to close entrances and steel wool to plug any holes in the hive. A hand cart to move the hives a short distance. A pickup truck or trailer for longer distances. A nuke box to collect those bees who may be left behind, and a reorientation prop such as branches. So if you are going to move your hives, remember that the OMAFRA registration was specific for the location where you had your hives. If you're moving your hives to another location, then you must submit the new information to OMAFRA so they can update your certificate registration. That's really important. See the OMAFRA website for complete details on how to do that. So make sure your new site is ready. Again, to gather all your tools and so on. So very, very important that you do all that. 2 sets of ratchet straps, metal screens, again, hand cart, and so on. How to move them short distances. If you relocate a hive any further than 3 feet inside the radius, your bees will return to their original location and wonder where the hive went. If you're moving your hive between 3 and 35 feet, you can move them incrementally 3 feet a day until you reach the new location, and the bees likely find the new location. When you're moving hives 3 miles at once, you need to reorientate the bees after the hives have been relocated, and place the reorientation prompts near the entrances of each hive to let them know where they've moved to, and reopen the hives as soon as you can to avoid overheating. Excuse me. Same basic steps for long distance, but you have to just be patient and check your old location, collect any bees left, and there's a great reference for that, and it's come from the Better Bee. And we spoke about the Bees Act and its legislation that regulates keeping bees in Ontario. And again, that particular beekeeping registration certificate must be posted at your hives. There will be an OBA meeting April 5th and 6th in Ancaster, Ontario, but there is more information to come. Watch the website. Enjoy your spring and your bees. Thanks so much. See you next month.
Thank you, Marion. All right. So Jeff, do you want to start your presentation?
Sure. Oops. Sorry. There. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'll tell you a little bit about our hives and some of the circumstances that we were dealing with that led up to us having to also deal with the laying worker situation. So our hives are up in just outside of Dundalk in the Grey Highlands. It's a beautiful area. I'll be honest, when we moved the bees up there, I didn't see a whole lot for them to feed on. So I was kind of wondering how they would make out, on that. I didn't see a lot of blooming things. There was corn behind us, which is an okay pollen source, but that was it. So we, once we got them up there, we actually doubled our hives and we introduced some Saskatraz queens, which were quite interesting. They're a little bit spicy at certain times of the year, way more than our original hives. And in order to do that split, what we ended up doing was adding deeps to each of the hives, and that's why they're so tall, and let the bees fill those out and lay in them. And we use green bottom boards. You can see the hives are sitting right out in the open, and they do quite well in the winter. I like the cozies. We get a nice tight fit on them. This year, we also added a 2-inch slab of styrofoam on the inside, just above the inner cover. And, actually there we are. We decided that we would split our bees again. We had okay luck in doing the first split to get to 4. We were a little stingy on the resources for those hives, so this time we thought we would be a little more generous. These are just some clips of the bees, that's all. Nothing like the activity, seeing out front of your bees. So we had great populations. We thought, okay, this is going to be really, really good. We'll make sure that we're generous. So we were assessing the condition, and I put the timing in there. I'll be honest, for record keeping, we use some sheets that Aline has put together, and they're fantastic for prompting you in looking at things, but also documenting and then going back and having a look. So you can see the hives were, quite busy. We had some great frames to choose from, tipping up our boxes to have a peek. And it's when we started to look a little bit closer, we actually realized that we're picking a good time to do it, because you can see we've got larvae up in these charged queen cells, which was a little scary. So we didn't want to lose any bees to swarms. So we thought, well, at least we'll be setting them up well. So we decided for this split that we would move the existing queen to the new hive and let the remaining bees use some of those cells to produce new queens. It was very straightforward, and we're moving them about 150 feet. And you can see these 2 shorter ones. We name all our hives, and that's how we can keep track of things. So on your right, this would be honeycomb. And over in between the 2 stacked ones, that would be new kids. I might have that actually backwards. Yeah, so sorry. New kids are over on the right. Honeycomb is the one in the middle. So once we move your bees, you know, give them a couple weeks to sit and settle in there and start laying. We're also managing supers on those other on the other hives, and my girlfriend and I both work these. And one of the interesting things during this process was, you know, yeah, you get lots of nectar. We're also dealing with a distance of about an hour and a half away. So anything that we do, we have to kind of project ahead a little bit. And that's where I sort of failed a little bit on this. We also take some time, because we're not right near them all the time, to marvel at their beauty and how they work, you know. And I just thought this was a cool clip. And I get a bit distracted when we're, you know, working with them and looking at the bees. So, as I said, we plan the time of going there. So you can see on each of the splits, we just swapped the boxes, but we added a second deep on top. I was very optimistic. New kids really took off. I mean, it really filled the bottom box and took off. Honeycomb, not so much. But again, we're dealing with that timing, and we didn't want swarming or anything. So we added the box, even though my girlfriend was reluctant to add one, trying to plan. What we had at the same time is that from our originals, one of the hives didn't produce its queen. So we were going back and looking. And then over where we did our splits, the one on the very far left had also suddenly lost their queen. So you have all these other things happening that are great distractions. So when we went back, we had a look. New kids had taken off into their second deep. However, honeycomb didn't. And you know, we ended up taking some resources from new kids, pulling them over to honeycomb. That should have been one of the very first red flags to say something is going on in there. But again, we're dealing with remote distance. And I think also we just had so much things to accomplish. We were very ambitious in what we needed to do each of the visits. And that might have been just too much. So what we ended up doing is for some of the other hives, we ended up introducing new queens. So that's a stress in itself of making sure that, you know, are they going to get released? Are they going to accept them or not? You know, and as you can see, the timing, now we're at the end of June. Everything looked great here. And this would be a replacement queens for Deliverance and B52s. And then back in we were assessing our splits. So we got back and we decided we'd try our drone frames. This is new kids. They just took off. They drew that frame all out, and the queen laid it up like you wouldn't believe. In honeycomb, they didn't. They didn't draw that frame out. The population wasn't growing. Again, should have been another red flag. But we're trying not to bother them too much. Now we're sitting up around the first week of July. And this was great. It was an opportunity to try doing a little bit of mite managing, you know, using the drone frame. It's very impressive to see. And as I said, it was great to go back through our records. We can keep track of things. So for each hive, we track all our things in there, and you can see some of the information here. The one thing that we were battling at the time was the mites, and we were looking at our numbers, and these are the numbers that you're seeing in the charts, the 2, 2, 2, and 3, and 8, those are the mite counts. And that's not the percentage. That is just the number of mites that we saw. And one of the neat things with that drone frame is we were able to freeze it and then pull some of them out and see what was in there. So again, the pressure of the mites and not letting them get ahead of you before they start producing, before summer's done. We treated the hives with Formic Pro. And the ones that we didn't do, of course, were the 2 newly introduced queens. And then we went back and we had a look at honeycomb again. We're seeing some of the mites in the on the drones. Didn't see any eggs. And as we were sitting and doing this inspection, I'm holding a frame and I'm just looking at the bees. And lo and behold, right down towards the bottom right, there was a virgin queen. And that shocked us. We weren't expecting it. And of course, the easy conclusion is, oh, you know, Formic Pro probably killed the queen. Well, I can tell you that the red flag was that we weren't seeing the growth in that hive. So something had happened to that queen. We don't know what. And whether, you know, Formic Pro happened to bump her off, it's just, again, highlighting that that was a compromised queen to begin with. So in seeing this queen, we stopped what we were doing, we packed it up, and we thought we'll go back in 2 weeks and have a look. So no big deal. They requeened. Beautiful. That's fine. Now we're getting to, you know, 2 weeks into August. We went back figuring, okay, we give her time. We don't know whether she, you know, was a new virgin or came back from her mating flight or whatever. And we use these cards. We take pictures of all kinds of things. The bottom boards, that's why I like the screen boards, is you can pull them out, take a look at the mite drop, after treatments, everything. So we went back in to have a look. And I thought, okay, you can see the picture on the right. You see a few eggs in there. No big deal. Maybe it's a new queen. She's just laid a couple of cells in the eggs in the cells. No problem. Unfortunately, we also saw queen cups that had about 4 to 5. And we could not find the queen. So it was time, you know, to bounce some ideas off. So I actually reached out to Aline to ask his opinion on things. I still was somewhat optimistic. You know, maybe she's just laying way too many, but obviously the issue was we had a laying worker. One of the neat things that I found since this time is that as soon as you lose that virgin queen and you don't have the pheromones coming back in, or actually all the queen right eggs, once they're all capped and developing, you have this countdown that happens. It's like a, sorry. You have this countdown that's happening, and there's no pheromones that actually suppress the workers from developing mature ovaries. And you don't just get one, you get a number of them. And it is, you know, like this big countdown that happens. So in talking with Aline, we came up with a game plan on how we were going to approach this. And first we needed to confirm, okay, are we just not seeing the queen in there? You know, do we have a queen in there? Don't we? Whatever. Obviously, this was a very big telltale, but we still had to run both boxes of bees through the queen excluder, so that if we had a queen, because we had seen that virgin, then she shouldn't be able to pass through the queen excluder, so we should be able to find her. Unfortunately, we didn't see her at all. What we did see were these drone larvae that were being laid in some of the worker cells. And that was concerning. And you can see down in the box is another frame like that. In total, there was I think we pulled out at least 15 frames out of this box that were like this. So one of the other things that we needed to do, so this is where we were running it through. So our plan A would be to go through, look for the queen. We didn't find her. The amazing thing was these bees, they were not upset. They were great to work with, no stings, no nothing. They were almost like the ideal bee. But of course, they thought they still had a queen, and that was the laying workers in there laying eggs, and they're happy as can be. So once we determined there's no queen, then it was more consultation with Aline and discussing how we go and approach this. And you can see they're fanning away. Everything looks great, but we still just couldn't find that queen. We did see, quite a few fat drones. So it was plan B, and that would be, we need to look at getting rid of the laying workers out of the hive. We need to look at putting some resources back into the hive that would smell like a queen right. So that meant stealing a couple of frames. So we ended up condensing all these bees into one box. And we then pulled frames out, went and took 2 frames from each of our other hives. I think just 2 of our hives, and then put some drawn comb in for them. And at the same time, so we wanted to give them a little bit of time like that. And then we took this queen here and put her in the box. But the end of this cage here, we left the plastic cap on so they could not release her. And that way they would have the smell from the eggs, from the queen right cells, hives, plus they would have this queen to get along with. And we went back, I believe it was 5 days. So it was a neat process. The people where we have our hives let us borrow the tractor. We were able to take this hive right out of there, and we took it about 300 feet away. Actually, I'd say 300 yards away. And it was not in the view of their, where we shipped them out was not in the view of where they could have a line of sight to know where to head back. So we thought we were pretty good. There. So anyway, you don't need to listen to me comment. We shook all the bees out. It was fantastic. It was like a snow globe. They were all over the place. And again, still very docile, but you see how they cluster there. Now, what we did is we took the bottom board and the first box and ran it back before we started shaking a whole lot of the bees out. And by the time we actually got the box back to their hive, hoping that only all the laying workers would end up being stuck where they are, there were bees waiting there for that hive. It was impressive on how fast they were. And it was a great sound. They were all over the place, but again, no stings. So we had a plan. It was great. That part went good. So you can see, we have the queens right in here. And you can see this big cluster of bees. And, you can distract yourself and say, oh, no, this is great. They are just excited to see the queen. I don't know that this is, the nicest cluster on there. And at the time, I think we were so focused on fixing things that ignored the fact that, yeah, this might be a little bit aggressive. So this is just, again, the approach that we took. But you can also look at the date. So August 24th, and this is when we're putting this queen back in. We also added a Saracel feeder on top with about 2 liters of syrup in it. And that was to give the bees something to do so they don't focus on this new queen so much, that they would just focus on collecting that syrup and bringing it down and going about normal duties. And again, we added, queen right, frames from queen right hives with great hopes. Not a lot of fanning, not a lot of, great activity in hindsight. So September 10th, we went back, had another look, no evidence of a queen. We're also getting quite concerned at this point in time because we we also know that they're going to need to produce winter bees. Well, when we went back, there was no evidence of that queen that they had been given. There were no capped worker brood in there. There was just drone brood. The bees, again, were still in great temperament. It was really hard emotionally for me to, give up on them. And this is despite, in some of the different online groups, people will say, just shake them all out, and in hindsight, yeah, I think that's probably the best approach, especially considering this hive was not going to be in any shape to survive the winter. They weren't going to have their winter bees. Oh, that's all I have. Okay. No, that's okay. I will stop sharing there. So since that time, we shook them all out. All those bees go and they beg and they try to get in some of the other hives. Since that time, I've watched a few YouTube videos, and one of them was Jim Vino from Vino Farms, and he did about, I think, 5 different episodes on his trials and tribulations through trying to queen right a hive. And he had some good points that he tried. And one of them that I saw he did was he had introduced a queen, they killed her right away. And he had introduced her into the top box in combining some hives, and they didn't like that. What he did later was he took screen and put it on the bottom of a 4-frame nuke and put that on top of the laying worker hive. And those bees actually stimulated the bottom box to not be laying worker anymore. And it was amazing. He tried introducing a queen again, they killed it. So he had to keep taking frames. So he got rid of the laying worker situation, but he had to keep taking frames from his other queen right hives and adding it to them. And then eventually they made their own queen. And that's how, but I don't remember the time frame that he had. It was obviously a lot longer than what we had with winter coming, even though he faces very similar climate. I also just watched another one, and this woman had a laying worker situation, and she had read some stuff about some commercial beekeepers taking and punching holes in comb and taking out select eggs. And what she did was she had taken this chunk of comb that had a couple of cells with one egg and had it facing down in between 2 cells, in between 2 frames, and the bees actually capped those off very quickly, and it corrected the laying worker situation there. So I thought, wow, those are some pretty good approaches. That if you have great population, which we had in that hive, that maybe you could salvage it. But I think what we're going to do this time is we're also going to set up a resource hive so that we can do that without compromising our honey production. And that's it.
If anybody has any questions, please drop them in the chat, or just you can voice them out. My first question would be, what was the time frame? Like, how long did you guys spend from the point where you saw there's some issues and then to the point where you executed the final solution, whichever that was?
I think we were looking at between 4 and 6 weeks, maybe. Yeah, it might have been even shorter than that. There was the pressure of, going up and doing things. I think it was even less than that, in what we had. Plus not having gone through that situation, you're trying not to jump the gun and trying not to be, diagnosing things just from pictures. So, you're trying to figure out what's going on. I knowing what I know now, I go back and, be looking that it's a laying worker and then taking a different approach for sure.
So say for this season, this coming season, what do you plan to do at the point where you identify, okay, we have a laying worker?
I would probably like to just take, if we're talking a single, I would just take that and put it on a queen right hive. And I'll quote Bob Binney, that hive will take care of those guys, no problem. I happened to catch that a little bit. They had, a laying worker hive, and they just doubled it up, and he said he wasn't concerned at all. And and I assume they fixed it. But I think not having, having this resource hive will give us the ability to either have a spare queen or a place that we can take some frames from without compromising another hive to move in and give that odor of a queen right hive.
There's a question in the chat. What is a resource hive?
So we went to the expo in January, and there was a talk, and basically from what we saw in there, it's actually a double nuke, in a 10 frame box, and you're raising them with their own boxes on top of that with a queen excluder in there. It was such a fascinating thing. For one of the other issues that we had was trying to get the hives to draw out frames for us. So apparently in these resource hives, they'll draw out the frames pretty quickly. And you can also, if you have a hive that's fumbling a little bit and you want to boost it with some drawn frames, you can end up doing that too.
All right. Another question in the chat is, what is the purpose of shaking out the hive? How would the laying worker not find their way back?
My understanding of that is if you take and you shake that hive away, the laying worker doesn't know the way back to where that hive was, and they've developed some ovaries, so it's a little more difficult for them to fly back. One of the interesting things I meant to cover in there, in looking at the frames with the nectar in it, it was when we had confirmed there wasn't a queen in there. One of the laying workers actually went up and laid into the super. And it was like, oh, wait a second, what's going on? But we didn't obviously let them go all the way. But I took advantage of the fact that they capped some cells up there. And in pulling the drones out, there was, out of say 500 cells, there was at least 200 Varroa mites. So that was the other thing of shaking those bees out. I was concerned that, are we just going to throw this mite bomb at all our other hives? So we ended up doing a bit of treatment with Apple Life Far before we shook them out.
All right. In terms of like preventing that from happening, like what would be your advice to someone, to a beekeeper that it's managing, the colonies along the season? Like what signs would you say look for and so on?
Well, the queen not producing a good population and keeping up to other hives, that should be a red flag in itself in just watching. That doesn't mean it's a laying worker, but that was the start of it. I feel that I should have paid a little more attention to. Seeing the multiple eggs in the cells or off to the side and not the beautiful pattern of where they just seemed to be able to get them right down in the center. But I will say that I think some of the laying workers were still managed to get them pretty close to the center of the hive of the cell, because those cells weren't drawn out, at any great length. So I think they might have lucked out there, and don't be the eternal optimist.
But do you think there was a too long a gap like in between your inspections where you had a queen and then you saw the multiple eggs?
It was only 2 weeks, so I
okay.
would assume so, but once we thought we had that virgin queen,
yeah, so that
then
can mislead you.
I gave her 2 weeks, and then it was okay. We need to go back and we'll double check. And I expected to see eggs, and in a good way, but no, we didn't see it. And I'll have to say that my girlfriend was correct in that she said we should shake it out right away.
So that virgin queen was not accepted, or she didn't mate or something, right? Did you only see that queen once, the virgin one?
We did, and we up in Dundalk, we were experiencing the wildfire smoke was like pretty prevalent. So we don't know if that had something to do with it, and that's why Deliverance lost their queen.
Yeah.
Is it related?
So there were external factors as well that could have contributed to your issue overall, right?
Right. I think, in hindsight, if I suspect that there's a laying worker, then having this resource hive, we could take a frame of newly laid eggs and put that in that hive and see if they try to build queen cells at an early point. Waiting several weeks and letting the laying workers develop their ovaries, no, you're not helping yourself. You'd have to do this early on, and that would be a cheap investment to see what their reaction is.
All right. So when you added the mated queen, right? Did you try to make sure that so was it just a shake, like you shook out the bees, and that was your attempt to make sure that there is no competition for the new queen?
No, we added 4 frames from the queen right hives in there, and
so that was open brood?
That was open brood, yeah. And that was from 2 of our other hives that were doing great. And then, once we set that up, we went out, shook the other ones out, and had that queen in there. But they're so quick in getting back there. It's amazing. But obviously, looking at how many eggs, then I don't know. It's
So what happened to that colony in the end? Did it overwinter or no? Like, did you go into winter with it, or
no? We shook them out. We just shook them
and
out.
they would just spread out to the other colonies?
I think they had no choice. They hovered around the spot where their hive was, but we took that box away completely.
Yeah. Did you notice an increase in bees in the other ones? In like the number of bees in the other colonies?
No, not really. Yeah.
Not visible, right?
No, which is surprising because it was quite a few bees.
There is a question in the chat. I believe you said you added brood frames from another hive, but not the brood of the queen you introduced. Is that right? Does the brood have its own pheromones that are not the same? So brood pheromone and queen pheromone are not related. It's just that sometimes when if we're lucky, the presence of brood and that pheromone could suppress the laying workers, but it didn't in this case, unfortunately. Then the next question is, maybe the bees didn't think she was the right queen. Yeah, I think laying workers are very aggressive. So yeah, so pheromones are strong and bees are happy. Question from the room. they don't have much.
Sorry, Aline, it's Nicole here. This is a question not related, Jeff, to your presentation. I apologize, but from some members in the room who are new to us, who are asking about making connections. They're longtime beekeepers with 400 hives from Turkey that are newly here in Toronto and looking to make some connections. So they wanted to ask who, if there are people that they could get connected with.
Just give them my number.
Yeah.
Tell them to give me a call in the afternoon.
Email might be better because you can translate it.
Yeah, email's probably better, Aline, just because.
Yeah, no problem. That's
text,
good.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aline@northumberlandbees.com.
Okay, great.
Jeff, in your area where you have these bees, let's say assuming that the Virgin Queen would have not go away for whatever reason she did, do you think she would have had a good pool of drones to mate with? Is it just your hives in that area, or do you have any neighbors that have hives?
There are two other beekeepers that we have come to discover.
Close?
One is 9 kilometers away, and another one I
good.
would say is probably 6 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah, but we had at that point would have had 6 hives at that time. So
there would have been drones, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we had, in one of the other hives, when we did those splits, they requeened themselves, no problem. And they took off.
Yeah. Do you have a set schedule for visiting the hives?
We don't, but we're going to have a much better one. I was balancing work and days off and everything else. So now being retired, we'll be going up a lot more frequent.
And what is the pace that you plan to have this year? Like every week, every 2 weeks to inspect the bees?
We were going every 2 weeks before that in the spring to have a look, but it really depends on what they're doing. What are we seeing, and what concerns do we have? I don't know. We'll see what they tell us.
Did you visit them recently? Are they all alive? Yeah.
We had activity in all 5, and we got to play with our vaporizer and give them a treatment on one of the warm days. And we got a call today from the person that whose property it is to say that there was activity in them.
Nice.
Now, it was interesting that there's the 3 in the one clump and then 2 on the other side of the yard. The 2 on the other side of the yard only had a few bees out front, yet the hives are very heavy. And there are bees alive in them, but the ones that are out in the sun more, boy, lots of activity, piles of dead bees out front.
Yeah. Solar gain helps them a lot, right?
And we ended up, using the bee cozies for 4 of them, and then went back to the original Wellington wraps that we had for the one remaining. I like the bee cozies. I think maybe that's pampering them more, but giving them good insulation because they're out in the open. But the Wellington wraps seem to do well.
I guess if they're strong enough and there's enough bees, they can manage, right? Are they in like exposed to winds?
They are. They are. And again, my worry of things, we actually took sheets of plywood and cut them into 2x8s, and we built a wooden frame around them to stop the wind from being able to blow directly into the hive.
Okay.
Because we've got, the bottom entrances are about 2 to 3 inches, and then we have an upper entrance, the typical upper entrance. So I just didn't want the wind blowing in and causing, increased flow through the hives.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you very much, guys.
I have a question. Are a lot of people